The West Tigers podcast has organised another coach trip, this time to Newcastle, to see the West Tigers take on the Knights on August 11. It's a Sunday game at 4:05. We leave from Campbelltown Stadium in Lumia, pick up at Concord at the Centre of Excellence, make our way north, stop for lunch along the way, and then head to McDonald Jones Stadium to see the Tigers in action. Bookings are now being taken. Just head to westtigerspodcast.com.au and click on Do Game Day Coach Transfer. All the details, the itinerary is there, and you can put your details through and we'll get you on the bus. Hope to see you for our big coach trip to Newcastle. It'll be a lot of fun on August 11. Don't delay. There are only a limited number of tickets.
The West Tigers podcast, it's episode number 333, Steve. Let's hope we don't get to 666 or we might all be completely mad and deranged.
Well, I don't mind getting to 666. G'day, Eddie, by the way. G'day, everyone. I don't mind getting to 666 as long as we've had a few wins by then, mate.
Yeah, it's been a tough first 333 podcasts, I suppose you could say, but it was a podcast with a difference on Sunday night, Steve, and I've got to say I really enjoyed it. It was I didn't enjoy Gary hosting, but I enjoyed Rachel, Jordan, and Nick. I thought they were excellent. First up, very calm, measured in a lot of the questions Gary posted.
Yeah, I agree, mate. I thought they did a great job, all three of them. The thing that got me was their knowledge, and it was great to hear some fresh ideas and fresh opinions. And I never thought I'd actually hear this, but there were a couple of times where Gary was lost for words. I don't know if you picked that up. There was a couple of seconds of dead space, just before he realised he had to ask a question. And I thought the thing I never thought I'd hear on a podcast was Gary not speaking.
I think he was on his best behaviour as host. He was, like I said, you got to let the guest speak when you're a host, and I thought he did a good job of that, Gary.
Yeah,
but
he did. He did.
I think Jordan predicted three wins in a row in his prediction at the end, which was optimistic, but it's good to have someone who's optimistic, Steve, because I'm always a glass half empty sort of guy, and I think Nick's a bit more my style. He sort of said when Gary asked for one word, I think being a Tigers fan during the bye, I think Rachel and Jordan sort of said they were a bit bored, whereas Nick sort of said it's stress-free.
I think Jordan might have been out at Lidcombe Oval or somewhere like that, and it was Jersey Flegg, State Cup and something else. I'm not sure, all on the one day. I'm not sure we're going to get three in a row this year, but according to Benji, they're all fresh and raring to go.
Right, Steve. Well, usual midweek podcast on the table here. We're going to do buy, sell, hold. We're going to preview the Dragons game and, of course, the quiz at the end, except the quiz has been little twist to it. You're going to read it out to me. Yachty did send it to me, but I swear on my mother's life, Yachty, I did not read the answer. So we'll see how I go. Question one, Steve, for you. New South Wales would have lost last night's Origin, even if they had 13 players. Buy or sell?
Yeah, I'm buying that. I'm buying that. I just think, look, I know it's almost impossible to analyse that game based on what happened early in the game, which from my perspective was the right call, by the way. I'm not a Klein fan, but I thought he made the right call. So it's almost impossible, but I just felt Nicho Hynes was so far out of his depth, and even for the fact that they were playing short.
Almost looked like a bit of stage fright, Steve. He looked spooked.
It did. He did look spooked. He looked spooked the whole game, and his passing game was just terrible. Like, his kicking game was poor, but some of the passes he threw, like they were going to hand, but the guys were just getting absolutely smashed. They were hospital passes, non-stop. Yeah, he was definitely spooked. That's for sure.
I don't think you'll ever see that combination again, Hynes and Luai. And I don't think we can be as harsh on Luai, although I do watch him closer than other players, Steve, as I'm sure you do, given his circumstances. But there were a few plays last night where on the last tackle he just kept stepping in on the left foot, and there was a moment of magic there where he set Teddy up, but it was still looked like a lot of off-the-cuff stuff.
It is, and that's the way he plays, And there are some that are saying that once he's given the opportunity to play that 7 organising role and lead the team, he'll do it. And he's come out in the papers this week and said that he wants to be Batman and not Robin and all that sort of stuff, which is great. And I hope he can. I really do hope he can. But all I can talk about is what I see, and I'm still yet to see it. To me, he is a traditional 6 who plays like a traditional 6. He plays off the cuff. He plays eyes-up football. He's got one really good attacking move, and that's his left, stepping off his left foot. I haven't seen much else. I did see him a couple of weeks ago throw a couple of nice balls, which led to tries or at least clean breaks. But I don't know. I hope he can do it, mate. But I'm not even close to being near convinced.
Mm. Before we talk Tigers, because this is a Tigers podcast, I mean, that Billy Slater, he's such an impressive guy. You can see why NRL clubs want him, because I know it's probably a stroke of luck that you get an outside back off after 5 minutes and you got Selwyn Cobbo on the bench, but he just seems very meticulous. I wouldn't be surprised at all. You'll have to check the tapes in 5 or 6 years, Steve, if they go on a similar run with Billy Slater as coach and win 7 or 8 series in a row.
Yeah, I think that Cobbo one, that's a bit of he's being kissed on the bum by a rainbow with that one. That no one could have picked that. But yeah, he's very impressive in everything he says and does. But he's clever too. He's come out and he's I'm not talking about this. And he's playing the I'm outraged card, and the Queenslanders love that. So now, based off Billy Slater's comments, Queensland are going to be outraged for 2 weeks, and they've got a reason to go to Melbourne and thump New South Wales. So very well played, Billy Slater.
Question 2, Steve. Difficult one, because I didn't really want to, get back into the lows, but is there an air of hopelessness returning around the club at the moment? Buy, sell, or hold?
Okay, I'm going to hold it, and I don't usually hold. I listened to Benji's press conference today, and he was saying that there is an air of optimism around the club, and that there is a refresh and a renewed hope and enthusiasm and rigor around the place. So I'm going to hold it until I see what happens on the weekend, because he's saying you're going to see different Tigers. He did admit, I don't know if you heard it.
I saw it, Steve, and it was actually going to be my next question, but we'll twine it in with this one. But I think he said all the right things, but the body language, he just looked a bit defeated. And I maybe that's just me reading way too much into it, but I get the feeling they were really they did really need the break, and he mentioned that 2 or 3 times. I think that's maybe what you were going to go at. He mentioned mental health of players and coaches 2 or 3 times, which is an absolutely fair point. But I thought slightly concerning that the head coach is mentioning that halfway through the year.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think it's very interesting that he didn't just mention it about his team. He mentioned it about his coaching group, which would include himself. So it's obvious that he's feeling the pressure. From a public persona perspective, he's saying all the right things, as you just said, and doing all the right things, and he's coming across as a guy who's in control. But that was the first sort of little sign that this coaching gig might be really getting to him. And if it's getting to him, he's the apex, mate. It's getting to the others, right?
No, 100%. And I admire him for his honesty, really, because it's easy to get in there and say everyone's sweet and stuff, but you could 8 games in a row, he would have never had that as a player or obviously as a coach. And
yeah, and he made a point similar to you and I when we were on the pod a week or so ago, to get just you and I. And we were mentioning how this year's even harder because we're in every game.
He mentioned my word, Steve. He mentioned frustration 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, exactly. And so he's actually feeling the exact same thing that we are. Like when you're getting done 40-0, 50-0, whatever it is, like you mentally switch off after 20 minutes, and you might have the dirts, but that's the end of it. Whereas this year, you're hanging in there, right? And they just do enough to give you a sniff, and then they let you down, and that's heartbreaking. And if that's heartbreaking for us, it must be 10 times worse for him.
Well, exactly. I mean, we're not the ones that have to 5 minutes after a game go and speak to the players, then speak to the media. then hop on that bus from Townsville to Brisbane I mentioned to Joel, so I feel for him at the moment, but he's not going to get much sympathy, at least in the wider media, is he, Steve? It's a brutal game these days in that respect.
Oh no, it'll be everyone will be firing for him, and we lose a couple more. I'm sure there'll be the conversation will start whether Benji's the right guy and whether Richo should move him on, and all that sort of garbage will start.
Let's go to the next one, Steve. Stefano will leave next season, 2025. Be playing somewhere else, buy or sell. From memory, you bought it about 8 weeks ago, so you were obviously a little bit worried then. I'd say, I'm switching on.
Yeah, I'm going to buy it, and it's looking more and more likely, isn't it? We don't really ever know, because they play games these days, and they play games fairly cleverly to try to get the maximum price for themselves. So he might just be trying to squeeze more out of the lemon at the Tigers. But look, I just come back to it all the time. We're all the same, right? Everyone who listens to this pod and all of us that are on it, we just love the Tigers to death, right? We're all rusted on. But if I'm honest with myself, I just think, why would these young guys want to stay with a club that has just failed miserably for so long? And I like anyone else, I'm hoping that it turns around, and I'd like to believe there are green shoots, and with the change of admin, it is going to happen. And it's not going to happen immediately. I get that, but maybe it'll happen. But I can understand these young guys with a great future saying, you know what, my career is going to be better off at the Storm or at the Panthers or at the Roosters or at the Bronco, wherever. Like, you could almost put 14, 15 clubs ahead of us, and that's a really sad thing to say, but it's a reality.
Well, it's a short career as well, especially when you're positioned in the front row. But one thing I still think it's 50-50, and like you said, I have no idea. I don't talk to people on the inside. I've got no idea, and Richo keeps a very tight ship. But they're probably going to have to, it's fair to say, go over what other clubs will offer, because, like you said, if you've got, there's a shortage of front rowers on the market, shortage of quality players on the market, and I would say that 800,000 mark is definitely fair, but I don't think it'll be enough to keep him here.
No, it won't be. And, I find it interesting, and everyone's welcome to their opinions, and I respect everyone's opinion, but I find it interesting, reading the forums, and people say, "Oh, well, if it's going to muck up the salary cap, and he's not worth $1 million, and let him go," that's all right to say. But then what happens? Then we start the season with 12 in the front row, and someone coming through that's had played no games in the front row of first grade, and we start the rebuild again. And how long are we going to continue to restart this rebuild and accept it? At some point, we've just got to do whatever we have to do to keep the rebuild going. I've said this before, mate, on the pod. You can't just replace players. You've got to build your roster. If you're replacing, you've got to replace with better, but you've got to keep and add. Right? You've got to keep good players and add a good player. That's how we get to a top 8 team and a top 4 team and a premiership team. We keep, we add
and then we subtract, don't we?
Yeah, we do, mate.
It's been one of your points for years. But I was going to say, it's all well and good. It's exciting having Luai and Taruva next year, but all at the moment, I'm looking at the forward pack and I'm going, well, there's going to be no Papali'i, potentially no Steph, no Jake Simpkin, and obviously there's going to be additions, but are they going to be on that level? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. And the other thing that we go on about a lot here is that comes into that argument is you're not worried about losing Papali'i because he hasn't performed, but that should never ever have come into the equation, because we should have been able to get him to perform. The fact that we haven't been able to is a blight on the club, and that's why we're in this position. He hasn't performed. The team hasn't performed. He wants out. The club don't want him because he's not performing. Whereas that scenario just shouldn't exist. He should come here, and we should be able to get the best out of him. And then he's here for 3 or 4 years, and then we sign someone on top of him, and we've got him and someone else, and then we're in the right direction.
I wouldn't be surprised if they're trying to get someone like Luai to work the phones already. I know he's busy at Penrith, but one thing about Luai, we doubt aspects of whether he can be a halfback, but he's definitely a personality and an influential guy. So maybe he can turn Steph. But last one on that, it just makes it even harder, Steve, when you watch probably the other two big Sydney clubs that were rebuilding, Bulldogs and Dragons. And Bulldogs have been sensational this year, which is hard to swallow because obviously we were after their coach as well, and he had a huge roster clear out last year and got a little bit of flack in the off-season for recruiting a heap of utilities. But, I mean, most of those guys are just soldiers that are sort of doing their job. They've obviously recruited some quality, and then also the Dragons, who we play tomorrow night, I think they're sitting at about 50%. So that's the frustrating thing is those other two clubs are batting at about 50%, and we're still hovering in that same position we were last year.
Yeah, well, if you're a Dragon supporter or a Bulldog supporter, I think you could. I think most fair judges would say you've seen enough out of them to know they're on the way up. They're not going to win any competitions this year, and they still will probably struggle to make the top 8 at the back end of the year. Well, maybe the Bulldogs get there. I'm not sure St George will, but at least you get a feeling that you're heading in the right direction at the moment, and we still are not seeing that. We're hoping that we're heading in the right direction because of what's happened with our admin, and we've got an awesome CEO and a more stable administration, but certainly not seen it on the field yet.
Before we preview the game, Steve, what would you be saying if you were Benji to the group as if they come back in from this bye week? Is there a win total they're looking for the rest of the year, or is it purely week by week, keeping up that effort? Because, I mean, we keep talking about effort, but I suppose effort is expected in the NRL. It sounds harsh, but that's sort of the bare minimum. We've got that every week. But, if they put in effort for the next 12 weeks and lose another 12 games, where will you sit? Yeah, well,
if effort is expected, but I go a step further than that. Wins are expected. This is NRL. These guys play this game for a living. Right? The expectation is you win football games, and anything under that just doesn't cut it. We're not giving out prizes, for finishing the race. We're giving out prizes for winning the race, and that's what the NRL is all about. So that's still got to be their focus. But I think Benji nailed it in that press conference, and it's the exact same thing that we've been saying ad nauseum. Right? They're beating themselves in a lot of situations. Right, the lack of discipline, the lack of attention to detail, the lack of execution in attack and defence at key moments in the games kills us. And so I think the focus between now and the end of the year is discipline. Play disciplined football. And you still got to play a bit of footy. So you got to counter that a little bit with playing some footy because, if we just go 5 up and kick, we're not going to get anywhere. But mate, they've got to cut out the errors. Like that is amazing what Benji said today. Most
sin bins, most penalties conceded,
everything.
And to be fair, it's easy, and I'm sure he was frustrated. There are 50-50s that we lose because that's what happened when you're at the bottom of the table, and it happens to other clubs that are at the bottom of the table. But there were glaring ones this year, aren't there, Steve, where it's just literally individual acts that shoot ourselves in the foot.
Yeah, absolutely they have been. And they've been in every single game and individual missed tackles. Like you can understand when a Brisbane Broncos, run it down the right side and get outside you and beat you on the outside. You can understand that. But when you're 2 from the ruck and you just miss a one-on-one tackle, which causes the bloke to make 50 yards downfield, you've got to fix that stuff up.
Dragons in Wollongong, Steve. By the time people are listening to this, it'll be game day because we're recording Thursday night, a little bit later than usual with the Origin on Wednesday. But Friday, 8 o'clock, Steve, it'd be one for the hardy souls to get out to Wollongong on a freezing Friday night in the rain. And will you be doing that?
No, I will not be. I'll be sitting in front of the heater with my slippers on, watching it at home, I'd say.
8 losses in a row. But, Wollongong actually has been a happy hunting ground over the years. We have lost our last 2 there, but I reckon we've won 4 or 5 games there. We did lose to the Dragons earlier this year, 24-12. A little bit, I know it's been slightly negative, this podcast, Steve, but it's hard to get away from it. I saw Shane Flanagan this afternoon, and he said, I think all 3 Origin players are going to back up. So Ben Hunt, Zach Lomax, and Jaden Sewer, probably not what we need. We've got a really understrength team this week, don't we?
We certainly do. And a very interesting one word to describe the team. I'm sort of perplexed with some of the positional moves that Benji's made.
What perplexes you most there?
Staines in the centres is the first one. I just can't. Is that because he's the last man standing? We've got no one else. I just can't.
Well, it's interesting he dropped Josh Felady, who I thought had a go against North Queensland. Obviously, Declan Casey had a shocker, but that was a little bit concerning when you think he'll be up against potentially Moses Suli. I'm sure Dragons will be directing some attack that way.
Yeah, that's right. And considering you've got Alamalo on brought back in on the wing, where he's shown that he's average at best under the high ball, and defensively he makes some very poor decisions. Well, that's what he's shown so far. Maybe this is his chance to change that, but I'm really surprised that he's back in the side from what he's shown, because that would have been Staines' spot. And then whatever happened to the fella at the beginning of the year? What's his name? Fatuma, or played in the centres in the first couple of rounds of the season?
Yeah. I know who you mean.
Yeah. I think he's playing State Cup, and he's he wasn't brilliant, but he was solid. So I don't know, that surprises me. I'm worried about Twal and Seafarth starting the team as well. Naden at 14, that's very perplexing. I don't understand that.
Would you have been, there were a few fans online that were disappointed that Benji has Naden in the 17, but it is a bare bones outfit. Would you have liked to see him be a bit stronger there and say, your last 2 games were unacceptable, doesn't matter who's available, we're dropping you? Or you're happy enough with him on the bench?
Well, look, I'm not of the mind to say, you've had a bad game, so that's the end of you. We're putting the line through you, never see you again. But I think he probably had to go back and play some good football. Interestingly enough, the best football I saw him play this year was in the halves in State Cup, and he looked really good. Now, it was only a real snapshot. I mean, Sullivan's not setting the world on fire, so if he's going to come back from what I've seen this year, and we're under in the halves, I wouldn't mind seeing him giving a shot there, but that's probably really, really reaching to find a spot for him.
Solomon Fatape was the centre you were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Played the first 4 or 5 games, and defensively I thought did a solid job, but Benji has opted for another new combination. Alex Lobb, I'm glad to see he's get his opportunity on the wing. It was a very small sample size against North Queensland, but I think he deserves a proper debut, given that he looks a strongish ball runner, stronger than some of our backline have been, and should be a threat in the air if we can get our kicks somewhere near the goal line.
Yeah, that's right. And I think he actually did that in early in the season in a trial match. I think he was quite good in the air. And the other thing about him, Eddie, he's a great goal kicker, apparently. And, it's something we've been short on over the years. So it'd be lovely for him to, sort of show that he's first grade standard and plus add his goal kick into that.
Mention that back row, very inexperienced, and I find who's been excellent this year. Seafarth starts. I'd be interested to see Justin Matamua, because I've been harsh on him because we don't see him more than a couple of times a year. But there were little glimpses in that North Queensland game that he can potentially be that ball-playing lock. But this will be a bigger test on a wet night against a pretty big Dragon side. Yeah,
they got a good side, and they got a good bench as well. A very strong bench actually. So it's going to be hard up the middle for 80 minutes. But I said a couple of weeks ago, I think it was now, on the pod that I was going to reserve my judgment with him, and I'm looking forward to seeing him play again, because as you're right, he did do some good things. I liked his footwork at the line when he was playing 13 in that last game, so I'm keen to see him have another go. I'm also really keen to see the other Fainu Sione Fainu off the bench. I thought earlier on in the season I liked what I saw out of him as well. So it'd be great to see, him kick. Like his brother's already kicked on. It'd be great to see him kick on, Polo kick on, and all of a sudden there is a bit of grunt in that forward pack. So that'll be good to watch.
I got to admit, Steve, I had to go to Google to look up Ruben Porter. I hadn't heard of him, but he's played over 100 State Cup and Queensland Cup games, so he's a forward that's going to come off the bench. But I mean, that's a great story for a guy who's played over 100 reserve grade games to get a first grade game, and by all accounts, he's been fairly reliable playing for the Magpies. But I guess it just shows, and we did it a bit in the preview for this year, that once we got 3 or 4 injuries, particularly in the forwards, we were going to be woefully exposed in terms of experience in this squad.
Yeah, well, and that's what's happening right now. Yeah, so I don't know him, Ruben Porter. Don't know him. I've never seen him play. Don't know anything about him, to be honest. But I wish him all the best. I hope he does really well. As I've said many times, I hope these guys coming through show that they've got first grade about them. So often, unfortunately, we get guys come through and they don't look first grade ready. They don't look like they're quite good enough. They sort of sit in that spot between reserve grade and first grade. We've got a couple coming through now, like Fainu and Galvin, that you can see they are first grade standard footballers. So let's hope Lob shows this. Let's hope Ruben Porter shows this, and Sione Fainu shows it as well.
Okay, prediction time, Steve. It's hard to be optimistic at the moment. I'm going to go 26-10 Dragons. So a similar theme to what we've seen of late, but maybe the wet weather could keep us in it, and Origin players backing up. That's an opportunity for our guys who are fresh off a bye to maybe we can hit them early and shock them.
Yeah, well, I'm going for a Tigers win. I'm going for an upset. I think we will get them. I think they will struggle with those 3 guys coming back. I don't think they're the complete package at St George. They can put some very good football together, but they can put some very poor football together. Play some very poor football. So, if Hunt's off his game a little bit and Lomax is quiet, as he could be after a huge Origin game, and Sewer as well, I reckon there could be enough there for us to get through. And Benji's saying that they're refreshed, that there's a real enthusiasm, and he's had a really good week at training. So I'm going to believe that, and I'm going to say, no, we're going to get them in a low-scoring game. Maybe, maybe 16-12 or something like that.
Beautiful. I very much hope you're right, Steve. Let's do the quiz with a bit of a twist this week, because I did send you the quiz. I did send it in about size 4 font, so hopefully you can read it.
Yeah, I've just got it on my phone. I'm trying.
Let's see how we go.
So this is basically, I just want to get this right. Is this giving you an opportunity, or is this I've been sacked totally from answering quiz questions? I just want to know where we stand with this.
Well, I suppose we'll have to let the listeners decide, because I don't know if the listeners are going to trust me, given I read out the quiz every week that I've read every answer, but maybe they'll be able to tell by my tone of voice or something. We'll see.
I think I know what most are going to say, but anyway, all right, first one, you got his trivia. Here we go. At which stadium did our historic centenary clash take place against the Dragons in round 1, 2008? And it's multiple choice, mate. Was it ANZ Stadium at Homebush? Was it the Sydney Cricket Ground? Was it the Sydney Football Stadium? Or was it the Sydney Showground?
Now, I've got a good memory for this, because I was at this game, and it was the Sydney Football Stadium, and I'm pretty sure we won. And they might have even used not a leather ball, but they might have even painted the ball brown, I remember, for just like a tribute to 100 years of rugby league. So I'm saying it was definitely the Sydney Football Stadium, and I'm pretty sure we won that game.
Yeah, you're right. See, the Sydney Football Stadium, it was supposed to be played at the SCG because of the historical nature of the game, but they had the Sheffield Shield final.
Okay, big Shield final. Who won that Shield final, Steve?
Oh, I'm asking the questions, mate. Don't even think. Don't even get me into it. But I do remember. I remember that game. Ray Hadley called the game on the sideline as a tribute to Frank Hyde.
Okay.
That game as well. Yeah. All right. Question 2 is the true or false. All 7 St George, Illawarra, and West Tigers games at Wollongong have been decided by 12 points or less. True or false?
I'm going to go true.
Now, this is truly a yachty question. It's false. They've been decided by 11 points or less.
There you go. I mean, we never win by big margins, and I remember that opening year in 2000, they had a win in Wollongong. I think it might have been something like 15-8, and that was when St George Illawarra were a real powerhouse. So we've had some success down there, but yeah, Yachty got me there.
That's pretty good, Eddie. It was 15-9.
There you go.
He's got it down here. All right, okay, let's go on. Question 3. Which two West Tigers 2005 premiership winning players share the same birthday, albeit different years?
Jeez, that's one out of the blue. I can't.
So I'll give you a hint.
Yeah.
One's still with the club.
Obviously not in a playing capacity.
No.
Well, I'm going to go Pat Richards, and I'm going to pull one out. I'm going to say LaFranchi.
Pat Richards is correct, but the other is Scott Prince, both 27th of February.
Oh.
All right, question 4. How many tackles did former West Tigers player Jake Simpson make on his NRL debut? Now, he's actually got nearest to the pin, so the fact there's only one of you doing it probably makes it a little bit difficult. But
did you just call him Jake Simpson, as in Homer Simpson again, or did you call him Jake Simpson?
I wouldn't know, mate. It's late.
To go back to the tape on that one, I'll have to get Gary. He likes going back on the tape and replaying people's errors. So, most tackles. I assume it was a high number. I'm going to say 57.
I'm going to give that to you, mate. It was 58.
Okay.
But it depends on what stats you looked at. So 57, I'll give you that. All right, Yachty's bedtime story. Oh, I wish I'd read this now before reading it out. Yachty's bedtime story. It was the opening game of season 2006.
We played, I remember we played the Dragons at ANZ.
West Tigers were taking on the Big Red V at Homebush. Mark Gasnier scored a hat-trick, but so did Paul Fadawira, with Anthony LaFranchi also scoring a try. Brett Hodgson kicked a low 2 goals from 6 attempts. 27,865 supporters attended the match. We won the game 24-15. James Lalessi, Keith Galloway and Ryan O'Hara were all making their club debuts. All right, here we go. Who was making their NRL debut for the so-called defending premiers that also scored a try?
Well, we were the defending premiers. Is he talking about one of our players?
Yeah, there's a hint here. Benji threw the key pass to him with Marshall breaking his cheekbone in the process.
I was going to say Keith Galloway because he was the only debutant that he didn't mention, but there would have been another debutant probably in the back line. I go with Keith Galloway was debutant for us.
Michael Crockett.
Michael Crockett. I do vaguely remember he was an outside back, Michael Crockett. I'm not sure how many games he played for us, Steve, but Yachty did say in his subsequent text to me that no one will get that last one. So
I can tell you, Eddie, he played 8 games for the West Tigers in 2006, scoring 7 tries and primarily playing on the wing. So there you go.
There you go. Thank you, host Steve. I think that could be. You might have found yourself a new job there, Steve.
Oh, mate, that would, you'll get me on every Wednesday night if that's the case.
All right, mate. Well, thank you for logging on because I got to say I've been getting a lot of crickets when I'm putting up, especially from Declan and Joel. Big hello to them. You know, I say who's available, and I read who's read the text. Declan's read it. Joel's read it. No reply. I mean, that's just how we're operating apparently at the moment.
Now, I've heard Declan's out at Penrith. He's just checking everyone who's talking to Jerome Luai to make sure no one's trying to steal him away next year. Now it's going to be a long 12 months for Declan.
Sure is. All right. Thank you, Steve. Might see you on Sunday night if you have a win.
Cheers, mate. Thanks.